Welcome back to the Training Babble Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Shell, and this week we are going to do something a little different. With the Leadville 100 coming up in just a couple of weeks, we thought we'd let you listen in to our team meeting, hopefully pick up a few tips and tricks. And if you still have questions and are interested in a consult, you can find me at dave@kaizenendurance.coach, or you can find me on Instagram at kaizenendurance. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy. So quick overview. We'll do a course overview, talk about aid stations, crew cutoff times, pacing, weather, and miscellaneous. So again, everybody's pretty familiar with this. 105 miles out and back, starts at about 10,200 feet and climbs to 12,400 feet. It's a mix of forest trails, dirt roads, and pavement with about 70% unpaved and 30% paved. There is a little teeny bit of single track for those of you that like mountain biking.
I call it single track.
And then the key climbs, St. Kevin's, Sugarloaf, Columbine, and Powerline, and we'll talk about each of those. And then the total elevation gain is anywhere between 10 and 12,000 feet, depending on which service you're looking at, Garmin or Strava or Training Peaks. So again, this is mainly, and we've talked about this, the people who haven't done it, but the starts on pavement. I think most of you have had a chance to ride it at this point. There's going to be a shit ton of people. It's on the road. It's extremely fast. So I just kind of, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is from Kristen's file last year. She was averaging about 30 miles an hour for those first 10 minutes or so. And so it's just a lot of people. Tuck in, be safe, don't touch wheels. And then think about where you want to be going into corners. And so what I have highlighted here is this is kind of the first left turn off of the highway and then followed by that right turn onto the dirt road before you get to St. Kevin's. And so just like as you're approaching this, think about whether you want to be on the inside or the outside. For me personally, I would want to be on the inside coming into this dirt turn so that if I happen to slide, I'm taking out other people versus getting taken out. So just thinking about going into those turns and where you want to be lined up and protecting yourself.
So the other thing is too, on the road, you do have turns from 6th Avenue onto the road that's going to take you down to 9. And in those corners, you are packed in. So if you can make your way to the inside, great. If not, hold the line you're on and just stay where you're at. Don't make any sudden moves because on those turns on the road, you are packed in like sardines. And Kristen, you can speak about your experience from last year, but you're kind of packed in there. And at times there's not a lot of places to move, just so you're aware of that.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that, Kristen?
I mean, yeah, you're definitely kind of in a peloton at the start, and that lasts for a while, right? So you want to be careful and not make any sudden moves, I guess, and just try to make sure that you have a clear line of sight.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point to bring up too, is that we're going to talk about pacing, and you want to hold back and you want to like really pace yourself, but like in the beginning, it can be worth burning a few matches just to keep yourself safe and to get away from less experienced riders. And so it's okay to like, yeah, protecting yourself, getting up, like if it does start to break into groups, but I'm sure it's going to take a while to get there, but just always thinking about protecting yourself and staying out of trouble. Then the first major climb is St. Kevin's. This one starts at mile 6. Like I said, it's right off of that, not too far off of that dirt road. This is where a big bottleneck will happen. So again, this is where it makes sense to maybe burning a few matches just to get up front so that you can hopefully avoid some of these. It's steeper at the bottom. And then once it turns again, it opens up a little bit more. Yeah. Anything to add on this, Kimberly?
Yeah. So on Kevin's, I always like to say lucky left, because people will tend to crowd towards the middle. And Kristen, you can talk about your experience. They'll crowd to the middle and almost to the right side because it's cleaner. And that, so I like to stay to the left because I know for me, I have a better chance of being able to get up it without as many people coming off their bikes on the middle and on the right-hand side. And so when you're climbing Kevins, just be aware of the person in front of you and behind you. And I would even say 2 and 3 people ahead, because if you see somebody coming off of their bike, you need to call out riders back. Please move over, whatever you can do. A lot of times when I did it 2 years ago, there was nothing I can do. I actually had to get off and walk my bike because it was impossible. And that's because of where I was corral-wise.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that too, is that corrals will have a big impact on that as well. And so those of us starting in the further back corrals are going to be dealing with a lot more traffic. But it's a really long day, so don't blow yourself up in that first hour or two trying to pass a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's not where you're going to finish and win the race. So just settle in. You've got a really long day.
Exactly. I guess the last thing off this is once you descend off of this, it's a very fast road descent. And so it's a great opportunity for some free speed. And so put your dropper post down, get small, and just go as fast as you can. Use the entire road. And yeah, the being on the asphalt's pretty safe. And so you can really send it going down that. Cool. Next climb is Hagerman and Sugarloaf. And so Hagerman's, so once we turn off of the road, this is kind of a forest road, so it's very mild grade. It's very well groomed, and so nothing too big about that. But as we get towards the turn onto Sugarloaf, things might start to light up a bit as people are like trying to jockey for position and get in there first because it's more of a trail climb going into that. So again, just don't blow yourself up, but do think as you're getting towards the end of this climb where you want to be lined up and where you want to enter that climb going into it.
And typically on that, the first part of that where you turn off of Hagerman and start going up, I hang to the extreme left side because again, a lot of people tend to take the middle. I've just found that the left side, I'm able to keep moving up and have a lot less issues than those that are trying to take a different line. And Kristen, you can talk to your experience as well as on that. And just be prepared to go around people because people are going to hit those rocks. They're going to be popping off their bikes. And that's why you have to constantly be looking ahead.
Kind of a solid line of people still at that point. It was for me, and I didn't start in the last corral. They were a little bit better able to climb Sugarloaf than St. Kevin's for some reasons. More people fell off the bikes in St. Kevin's. But it's just solid lines of people, like 2 lines kind of going up each side of Sugarloaf. So you can kind of pass in the middle or on the side at times, but you're not going to get in front of everyone. There's like always more people.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that brings up a good point too, is like, this is something I always say in any mountain bike race, but like, don't be a sheep. Don't assume that because everybody's taking a line in front of you, that that's the best line. So always like be on a lookout for what's a better line, what's a more efficient line. And then it's going to be hard with so many people out there, but just leaving a little bit of a buffer. Don't be like right up on their back wheel, because if they stack it up, then you're just going to stack it up right behind them. And so leave a foot or two so that when they stack it up, you can get out of trouble there, if possible. Anything else on this one, KKs?
No.
Okay. And we'll come back to the descent on power, or the power line descent and descents in general. So then after Hagerman and Sugarloaf, you descend, and then there's quite a bit of kind of flat rolly stuff. So like through a field, through a neighborhood, stuff like that. And then you get to Pipeline and Columbine. And so Columbine is a very long climb. It's really well groomed. It's just a lot of switchbacks. It's not too steep of a grade until you get up towards the top. And then if you've heard of the Goat Trail, it's going to be loose. It's going to be rocky. There's going to be two-way traffic. And then on top of that, you're going from like 9,000 feet up to 12,400 feet. And so there's a good chance you might get a little daydreamy or a little loopy, a little lightheaded. I found when I'm drinking from my Camelback at that altitude, I tend to get pretty lightheaded. So I try to switch to my bottles as I get closer up, just so I'm not holding my breath as long. So you get to the top, very good chance that there's going to be hike-a-bike, just because as soon as somebody slips, they're off their bike, and then you're not going to be able to get started again. Turnaround is at the top, and then it's a very kind of loose technical descent off camber, can be rocky. And again, people are coming both ways, so just being careful of that. Once you get out of that, then it's a pretty mild descent. It's fast, but it's just Jeep road with a lot of switchbacks. And so just, watching yourself in corners, especially if it's super dry. Those
Which it
corners
has been.
What's that?
It has been very dry.
Yeah. So, but just like we'll talk about on the power line descent too, or like any descent, it's not going to win you the race, but it could definitely end your race. And so just descend safe, like use caution, don't ride too far outside your comfort zone, because it could get ugly there. So any questions on Columbine?
Hey, Kim, where was it that you said you pretty much hit the point where you make that right-hand turn and then you hit the Goat Trail and you might have to walk for that? So what are we looking for again? Was it construction equipment or something?
So there are like these big kind of army trucks.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe them. And that's kind of your last big switchback. And then you have a little ways to go. And then you get to the Goat Trail. And I think Kristen and I both experienced this. Once you get to the Goat Trail, you can ride a certain amount, and then you don't have a choice. You have to come off, because it's so chunky and nasty. There's really no way around people unless you want to burn a considerable amount of matches. And you cannot go to the left side because people are coming down. So in that situation, get off your bike, start walking, and walk at a nice pace, and eat and drink.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too. Like you said, it's like push with the purpose. So I think a lot of times people like get off their bike and then they start to like lollygag and they're kind of looking around and just like meandering. So like, don't do that. You can use getting off your bike as an opportunity to kind of bring your heart rate down and recover a bit, but still push with the purpose, because you could lose a lot of time there as well.
And that would be a good time to, fuel at the bottom of Columbine before, like when you're on Twin Lakes, make sure that you're eating and drinking. And then as you get into that climb, making sure like you've got nutrition in you for that climb. And then if you need it as you're climbing, great, you've got it. Keep doing it. But definitely on the Goat Trail, you can take more in there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, is you're looking at a 30 to 40 minute descent. And so it can be hard to eat or drink, especially at the top there. And so making sure to take in calories at the top before you descend, because you don't want to go too long without any food before you're able to take your hands off the bars again. The last thing I have on this is that the weather comes in and out really quickly up there. And so having like a rain shell, the descent can be super cold. So just kind of planning on that, so in the event that there is snow up there or hail or whatever we're dealing with that day, so that you're not shaking all the way down. and power line climb. So this is when you get back. I would say this is probably the most difficult climb, at least the first section. And so it starts off extremely steep, from about that half-mile mark to the mile mark. There's a good chance at this point, just from fatigue, that you might be hike biking at that point. Once you get past it, then it's still pretty. It can be loose. It can be chunky. There will be rutted stuff, but it's not horrible. It's windy. It's just that first steep pitch that's probably the worst.
And there are 5 false summits. So that first little pitch is your first kind of summit. And I will say this, pros are riding it. Not really mere mortals don't tend to ride it because it's just not. A lot of times, like you said, fatigue, you don't have it in you. And that is not where you want to spend your matches. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that maybe you could ride it, but that doesn't mean you should ride it. And so if you spend those matches to ride that steep pitch, it might cost you later in the race. And so if your heart rate's pegged at that point, then you might be better off just getting off your bike and like trying to let your heart rate come down a little bit, because it's not going to cost you that much time at that. But if you go into the red, it's going to be harder to climb out of that hole the rest of the race. So, anything else here, KK?
No, the rest of it is very rideable. Just, gear yourselves and just spin up it. And you will get through it and get to enjoy that awesome downhill. Yeah. So yeah, just spin, start picking your line, looking ahead. Like, don't have your head down, because we're all dying at that point, but make sure you're looking ahead to pick your line and you're not getting stuck in a rut.
Okay. So again, we've already talked about some of these descents, so we'll just cover them all again. Sugarloaf Hagerman, that one's fun, flowy. It can be technical at times. There is some off camber and some loose stuff, and so like there's one in particular I'm thinking about that it's like a hard right that can certainly screw you. So just being prepared for that. Power line's probably the most technical. It's very fast, can be loose and rutted. So that one, just being safe. And I think the thing we were talking about last weekend or 2 weekends ago, as you're going down that stuff, just ass back and stay off the front brake. So as long as your front wheel is rolling and has traction, you're going to be good. The back wheel can be sliding. And so think about your back wheel as scrubbing speed. If you're going to use both brakes, then look for clean areas. Scrub speed, slow down so that you get it to a speed you're comfortable with going into the next section. And then again, ass back, stay off the front brake.
And can I add to that?
Always.
There's a good possibility that the line you want to take is not going to be available to you. And you could very kindly say right or back, but you're going to notice that there are people that have a death grip on their bike and they are like, don't ask them to move. They're going to kill themselves and they'll take you out with it. Pick another line if you can, or wait for a time to get around them. And you'll find them littered kind of all over that top part of power line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Kristen, you were talking about that section, I think is after power line, where it is just kind of like a steep drop bridging the two roads. And you said that like there are people just like off their bikes standing, looking down it, afraid to descend. And so just being aware of that. And so don't put other people at risk, and also don't put yourself at risk. So just be patient and choose safe lines. The single track, it's not too long. It's super fun, but it's also super loose. And so there's a good chance there. I mean, the consequences aren't too great on that, but you could definitely like go off the trail into the bushes and stuff like that. So just taking your time down that, not going too crazy. Columbine, as we discussed, The goat trail is super loose and chunky, two-way traffic. The rest is fast and easy. And then St. Kevin's is fast and fun, but there's also ruts and then rocks. Towards the bottom, it gets like super rocky. It can be easy to burp a tire or to pinch flat there. And so, balancing between just like bombing straight through it and then also trying to pick clean lines and stuff like that so that you're not fixing a flat.
And you're also really fatigued at that point. So be really careful. Like if you're not comfortable taking a descent at a high rate of speed, that's not the place to start doing it. A guy actually at the end of the race did not finish the race and finished his life as a result. So just be safe when you're riding it. That's not the time to get crazy.
Then everything in between, we focused primarily on the climbs, but there's lots of pavement. So if you're with a group, chances are you will be, especially on the way out. Then get in a group, tuck in, take equal pulls. Don't be a hero. So what I mean by don't be a hero is like, don't go to the front and take a 5-minute pull or a 10-minute pull because you're feeling good in the beginning. It's like trade off every 2 minutes or so. Everybody shares the work. And then on the way back is typically a headwind. And that's where it really helps to be with a group. We talked about pipeline. That's kind of flat dirt road, maybe a little bit of a false flat. Not horrible. Single track. And then, I think the biggest thing that I would say with all the flat sections is it's really easy because you're not working against gravity to kind of see it as a break and to start daydreaming and kind of fall off pace. And so just keep pedaling with a purpose and keep the pressure on the pedals all day. And so, yes, you shouldn't be going as hard on those flat sections, but it's also not complete recovery at that point either. So just always keep the pressure on the pedals. Anything to add there, KK?
Kristen, I want to, like last year, and also you, Rachel, when you left Pipeline, were you able to get in a group once you hit the pavement, or were people pretty spread out? Because I've had it both ways. So I just wondered what your ladies' experience was.
On the way out, I was with a group. And then on the way back, I was solo, unfortunately. So, yeah.
On the way back, I was still able to find like one other person to ride with on the road through some sections. And so I thought that was kind of unique in this race that I didn't end up by myself for 2 hours or whatever. There was usually somebody, at least one other person to ride with.
Okay, good. And the other thing too is when you're in these sections, you can, take a look behind you, look ahead and look behind. And if you see somebody that, is coming up or keeping pace, you can, as soon as they're getting up to you, grab their wheel. Don't let them get past you. Grab their wheel and hang on if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there isn't anybody around you, then just, again, getting small. So thinking about where the wind's coming, get small. So, do the puppy paws thing or grab the middle of your handlebars, try to get low. Your body's the biggest factor when we're talking about aerodynamics. And so just if you can make yourself as small as you can be, that's going to have a pretty big impact. When you are riding with groups, think about where the wind's coming from. I see it a lot of times, like especially in gravel racing, where people are doing these straight pace lines in a crosswind. And so it's really not benefiting them. So if you're riding in a group and you're still feeling the wind from the side, it's not helping you. And so you need to get on the inside so you're protected and then rotate that way. I think that's all I have. Anything else, KK?
No.
All right. Weather considerations. Most people are familiar with this. Is the morning is pretty freezing. Can handle it a couple of different ways. You could kind of overdress I always like to use my rain shell as a warm up because it literally like gets me warm. And then by the time I'm standing in line for the race to start, I can peel it off, and then I'm a little bit overheated anyway. And so I'm not freezing. Um, Embrocation is like a lotion you can put on your legs that has a bit of a heat effect to it. And so that can help with that a bit. You can just buy throwaway layers. So if you wanted to buy cheap arm warmers or cheap leg warmers and then ditch them at the start or ditch them at an aid station. Um, if you're moving pretty fast, you can dress in layers and then shed some of it at Twin Lakes. So at that point, you're about 2 miles in, and so it shouldn't be too warm. And then, as we mentioned on Columbine, I would recommend carrying a light rain shell, something that like packs up super small, just because it can help you in a lot of different situations. KK?
I would say I agree with everything on race morning. Make sure that, the night before you do look at the forecast. I've had it both where it's been freezing and other mornings where I'm like, wow, this is pretty mild. I always start with arm warmers and like a wind vest because I can easily take those things down. And I do pack a light rain shell in my back pocket of my jersey, and I keep that with me for the day for warmth and in case rain and sleet come along, because I've had that happen as well.
Great. Nutrition. I mean, everybody should have this dialed at this point. Breakfast. I try to eat about 4 hours out. It can be kind of hard with the 6 a.m. start, 6:30 a.m. start. And so I've heard of people like setting an alarm at midnight so they can wake up and eat something and go back to bed. I'm not that person. I would never fall back asleep. So it might be more of a compromise for me where I'm getting up at like 3 so that I can have my breakfast and everything like that. So you don't want to have too much fat, too much fiber, or too much protein because that stuff's going to take longer to digest. Lots of carbs. Again, everybody should have their race nutrition dialed at this point. Gels and sports drinks, eating about 200 to 300 calories per hour, taking in something every 20 to 30 minutes. For the hydration, I get this one a lot. Like, I recommend drinking more frequently. So about every 15 minutes, trying to drink about 4 ounces every 15 minutes will keep you at that like 16 to 20 ounces per hour. And then just be aware that altitude increases your caloric and hydration needs. And so you definitely don't want to get behind on that. Like it's hard to come back from it if you forget to eat for a bit or start to get dehydrated. And so just sip, nibble, nibble all day long.
Yeah.
Cutoff times. These are good to know for those that are just trying to get under the 12-hour. These are each of the aid stations. So every aid station will be well stocked. I typically recommend, depending on how fast you're moving, I would say Twin Lakes is probably going to be most people's first stop. That's a great opportunity to drop your hydration pack and just do bottles up to the top of Columbine and then pick your hydration pack back up at the bottom. If you do, like I always say, use aid stations as kind of like in case of emergency break glass. You should really have everything you want and need on you. But the aid stations are more for like getting a Coke, or like if your stomach's getting upset and you're like can't stomach anything, then you just eat whatever you can stomach at that point. And so really using those aid stations as emergencies.
So I'll add to that. For those that are going to be a little longer on Columbine, 2 bottles might not be adequate for you. So I would do your pack. And the other thing and I'll just say how I run my nutrition and how others that I've supported have run theirs, is Twin Lakes is your major stop. So it's from town to Twin Lakes. Then when you come into the tent at Twin Lakes, which Dave will talk about where we're going to be, you will switch out, your pack. You'll grab your bottles or your next pack and gels head up Columbine. When you come back down Columbine, you're generally, unless you set up other support, are getting what you're taking with you back to town. I have people meet me at the bottom of Power Line where I'm really kind of cranky, and they give me a Coke and some food and say something funny so that I can get through the rest of the race. And then at the top of Carter Summit, depending on how you're feeling, that is a place that I will generally, because they're holding cups out, I will generally grab a Coke and like chug that little cup of Coke right there. And then go. I do not hang out. I do not hang out at the top of Columbine Mine because generally I'm a little bit dehydrated anyway. Staying there for any length of time, it just makes it worse. Yeah. So I get down there, do Carter Summit, and then I'm headed back to town. And the other thing, I'll let Dave talk about the tent and setup and stuff, and then I'll.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna two things. Like you said, don't spend, like I see that at a lot of races where people are spending lots of time at the aid stations. That's free speed, so like keep it brief, like be in and out as quick as you can. And then as far as the caffeine, I recommend trying to save that for the back half of the race if you can, because like especially with the Coke, at least for me, once I start, it's a roller coaster, and it's like I feel great for a while, and then I crash, and then I have to get more Coke, and so like really trying to hold off until I need it, and it's a great thing to look forward to. And that back half of the race is like a little bit of a boost. All right, yeah, crew support. There's, like we said, there's 7 official aid stations plus an express one. They'll all be fully stocked. For your crew, hopefully you have crew lined up at this point. They're really like your pit stop. And so it's their job to make sure you have everything you need, that you're eating, that you're drinking, reapply sunscreen, refill your Camelback, lube your chain. And so when you come in there and you're not thinking clearly, you're fatigued, things like that, it's their job to go through that. And so like I recommend having kind of a checklist that they can have so that when you pull in, they know exactly what they need to ask you, and if they haven't done it before. But if they're experienced, then probably not as big of an issue. Also, like as you roll through, they can hand it to you. So if you wanted your crew to be somewhere else on course, then you know that you would still have crew here or support here as well. Can also have like lube, like some basic mechanic stuff, and it's just so that when you come in there, if you need help, you can count on that. One last thing here, just altitude and pacing. Respect the altitude, treat it like extreme heat. Try not to burn too many matches. Try to stay below threshold as much as you can. And something to keep in mind is that at 10,000 feet, your threshold is going to be lower than it is at 5,000 feet or at 500 feet. And so just paying attention to the other signs, like what is your breathing doing, what's your RPE, what's your heart rate doing, and trying to keep it below that as much as you can. But there are going to be times where you're in your easiest gear, and there's like going your easiest is still going to be above threshold. And so you just manage it as best you can. Early pacing, I always say ride for the back half of the race. And so just kind of like the first half should feel too easy. And then once you get to Columbine and back down, that's where you can start to turn it up if you still have it. And then with the bottlenecks, stay patient. It's a long day. And don't burn too many matches. Then last thing, miscellaneous, put this on your calendars that if you're going to have your bike tuned up, then try to do it like yesterday, with the idea being that you get it back and you have a chance to make sure everything's shifting like it should, the tires are seated, everything's good to go. I would recommend having tire plugs and then your CO2 or frame pump with you, an extra tube, and a master link in the event that you were to break a chain. So those should be on you. And I like to put them on my in my Camelback in the front pocket so that in the event something happens, I'm not having to like stop and like go through my bag and try to find stuff. I know where it is. I don't have it on here, but like a tiny bottle of lube, I'll keep on me too in case my chain starts getting super noisy. as I have down here, noise equals friction and friction equals watts. So if you hear your chain, it's costing you more energy to turn your pedals. Download the GPX file to your bike computer. This can be really helpful, especially with climbs and stuff like that. Just when you get out there and you're brain dead and you can't remember which climb you're on or where you're at in the course, it's a good place to have on your computer. Talked about the cold start. It's an eating contest, so stay on top of nutrition, sip, sip, nibble, nibble. And then as you guys are thinking about like the best lubes and the best tires and stuff like that, I always say the best ones are the ones that keep you on your bike and that you're not having to reapply constantly. So even if it's a super fast lube, but it only lasts you like 2 hours before you hear your chain, then it's not a very fast lube anymore. And so really thinking about something that's going to last all day long. And if you have, if you want suggestions about lube that I recommend or whatever, shoot me an email and I can suggest that as well. Anything to add, KK?
No, I would go ahead and share the lube that you're talking about now, just for those that don't have your email.
Okay. So the ones that I like Dumont Tech Original Yellow for really dry conditions. For mixed conditions like wet and dry, then there's a Dumont Tech Original Green. I've tried all the different lubes, and that's the one I tend to come back to all the time. I used it for Unbound and never had to reapply my lube once. So that one works really well. I also like Smooth, which is a wax-based one. That's one of the few wax-based ones I found that last up to 10 hours in dry, dusty conditions. And then the last one, any questions? Open it up for discussion.
How about when you come into, say we come into Twin Lakes and we want to get new chain lube, do you suggest maybe someone having a water bottle and squirting the chain down first?
No, so I like wet wipes or baby wipes.
Wet wipes.
Yeah, so just so that way you can really quickly grab it, pedal backwards a few things to get the dirt off of it and then relube it.
Okay.
And I think there's a company that I think there's somebody that sells a degreaser wet wipe. The issue with that is that some of that's going to be left over and then you add the lube and then it's going to not adhere. So I think I just stick with the wet wipes, like the baby wipes. Plus they're cheaper and smell better.
What's your favorite scent?
Lavender. It calms me.
Nothing calms you.
Anything else? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining this. And if any other questions do come up, then feel free to reach out to me or to KK. And it sounds like everybody's going to be getting up to Leadville or in the area fairly soonish. So I think over the next week we should be able to get together and do some rides and stuff like that. And
I do have one, so I can lock out or unlock my suspension really easily. What do you recommend for I tend to like hardtail, honestly. Just I don't know why, but I feel like I can climb better with a hardtail. So other than that, I don't know. I feel like with flats, I can go mid. I can go, I can kind of adjust it on the fly. Yeah. So it basically comes down to how smooth it is. So I would say Columbine, the first 2/3 of Columbine or whatever, you could be fully locked out for that. But if it's a climb that's a bit more chunky, like Powerline, you want it mid because you don't want to be bouncing off the rocks. You want the suspension to soak up the bumps and stuff like that because that's going to maintain traction. So
Parts of Sugarloaf.
Fully open for descents that's fun mode, and then mid or locked out for climbs depending on how smooth it is. And then the same thing with the flats. On the roads, I would have it fully locked out, but if you're on a dirt road like Pipeline, I'd probably have it in mid because you're going to with the washboard and bouncing around and stuff like that. thanks everybody. Thanks for taking the time. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you.